I gave them my love, my trust, my future, only to have it stolen like it meant nothing. My fiancé, my sister, my wedding, they ripped it all away, parading their betrayal for the world to see, laughing as if my pain was an afterthought. They expected me to crumble, to disappear in shame, but they forgot one thing. I don't lose. Now, as I take everything they once held dear, I watch them realize they destroyed themselves. I've always believed that hard work and dedication would pave the way to the life I deserve. And for the most part, I was right. My name is Almira Monroe, and I built myself from the ground up, not with handouts, not with favors, but with sheer willpower. While others partied their youth away, I was securing internships, climbing corporate ladders, and earning every success that now bears my name. At 28, I'm at the peak of my career, a rising force in the business world, and engaged to Julian Harrington, heir to one of the country's most powerful business empires. My life, on the surface, is picture perfect, a dream engagement, a high-profile wedding in the works, and a career that keeps me sharp. But here's the thing about perfection, it's fragile. It takes just one betrayal, one cruel twist, to shatter everything you thought was real. I had always looked out for my younger sister, Bianca, defended her, supported her, even when she resented me for my success. I thought family meant loyalty. I thought love meant security. But as I was about to learn, the people closest to you are sometimes the ones sharpening the knife. I arrived home from a week-long business trip, exhausted but eager to finalize wedding details with Julian. The moment I stepped inside, something felt off. The air was thick with an unfamiliar scent, jasmine and vanilla. Not mine, Bianca's. My pulse quickened as I set my bags down, walking through my apartment with slow, measured steps. The unease only grew when I reached my bedroom. My closet door was ajar, and my heart nearly stopped when I saw the empty hanger. My wedding dress, the custom gown I spent months designing, the one meant for my perfect day, was gone. Before I could process it, my phone rang. Christine, my best friend. I picked up, expecting a casual chat. Instead, her voice was careful, hesitant, almost pitying. Almira, sit down. My stomach dropped. Christine never spoke like that unless something was very, very wrong. It's all over social media. I tried calling earlier, but I guess you were in the air. She took a breath. Julian and Bianca got married yesterday. In your dress. The words slammed into me, knocking the air from my lungs. I squeezed my phone so tightly my fingers ached. What? My voice came out strangled, disbelief clashing with the undeniable truth in Christine's words. I thought you knew, Almira. I thought they told you. I stumbled to my desk, opening my laptop with shaking hands. It took seconds to find it. Bianca's Instagram post. When you know, you know. Sorry, sis, but love doesn't wait. I felt sick. There they were. Julian in his designer tux. Bianca wrapped in my dress. Kissing like they had done nothing wrong. Like I was supposed to accept this. I stared at the screen. My breath coming in sharp. Controlled gasps. Julian had held my hand just last week, whispering promises of forever. Bianca had smiled at me, pretending to help with wedding plans. They had looked me in the eyes, knowing what they were planning. I had been played, lied to, betrayed. But they had no idea who they had just crossed. I closed my laptop with a slow, deliberate motion, inhaling deeply as the chaos in my mind settled into something sharper, focus. The old Almira might have crumbled, might have called Julian screaming, demanded answers, begged for explanations, but I wasn't her anymore. Instead, I picked up my phone and dialed Christine. She answered immediately. Say the word, and I'll start gathering alibis for when they disappear, she said, her voice sharp with barely contained fury. I let out a breath, a slow, bitter chuckle escaping my lips. Tempting, but I have something better in mind. I turned back to my desk, To the unopened letter I had received before leaving for my trip, an offer. One I had pushed aside in favor of wedding plans. I slid my nail under the seal and unfolded it, my eyes scanning the contents. My hands tightened around the paper. It was still valid. Harrington Enterprises, the company Julian had spent years trying to secure a deal with, was offering me a controlling stake. Christine's voice snapped me back. What are you going to do? I exhaled slowly, a smirk tugging at my lips. When? That afternoon, I made the call. By the time the ink was dry, it was official. I now owned 51% of Harrington Enterprises, the very company that Julian had spent countless late nights, desperate meetings, and half-baked proposals trying to impress. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the signed contract. They thought they stole my future? I just stole his. By the time Julian and Bianca would realize what had happened, it would be too late. They had expected me to wallow in heartbreak, to drown in tears while they celebrated their betrayal. But they had underestimated me. I didn't crumble. I didn't break. I rebuilt, stronger, ruthless, and with a plan that would make their perfect stolen life crumble before their very eyes. They had taken what was mine. Now, I was going to take everything from them. I stared at my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office. The city sprawling beneath me like a kingdom waiting to be conquered. Resilience, strength, control, words I had once associated with Julian, his supposed dominance in business. His carefully curated image of a self-made man. But he had never been any of those things. I was. He had built his career on borrowed influence, stolen connections, and the illusion of power. But I had built mine on sheer force of will. The first board meeting as the majority shareholder of Harrington Enterprises had been tense. The senior executives, most of whom had been expecting Julian at the helm, sat stiffly around the table, eyes darting between one another as they processed the news. The rumors had spread quickly. Almira Monroe, the jilted ex-fiancé, now their new boss. I let them sit in their discomfort for a moment before I finally spoke. Gentlemen, let's make one thing clear. I didn't get here by accident. I leaned forward, my voice steady, controlled. You were promised a leader. Someone with vision. Someone with the strength to push this company forward. That's me. Not Julian. Not Bianca. Me. Some exchanged glances. Uncertain. Others, those who had spent years watching Julian fumble opportunities, struggle under pressure, looked almost relieved. Good. They would learn soon enough. After the meeting, Bruno, my most trusted advisor, walked beside me as we stepped into the elevator. You handled that well, he said, watching me carefully, but the real fight hasn't started yet. Julian won't go down without a war. I smiled, pressing the button for the top floor. Let him come. I'm ready. Because the truth was, Julian had always relied on me. On my intelligence, my instincts, my unwavering ability to fix what he broke. And now, for the first time in our lives, he was about to realize what it meant to be on the outside looking in. I wasn't the woman who cried over betrayals anymore. I was the woman who survived them. The whispers had started before I even walked into the room. They thought I couldn't hear them, executives murmuring, analysts exchanging uneasy glances, some even daring to smirk as if I were a passing storm instead of the incoming reckoning. She doesn't have the experience. Julian built this company. How can she run it? She's just here to prove a point. I let them talk. Let them weave their illusions. Their false sense of security. Because soon, they wouldn't be whispering. They would be scrambling. I walked into the conference room of Harrington Enterprises. The long mahogany table lined with the same men who had once dismissed me as nothing more than Julian's plus one. They had underestimated me then. And today, they would pay for it. Shall we begin? I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. The meeting started with cautious formalities. But soon, the numbers came up, the weak financials, The dwindling investor confidence. The reckless spending Julian had buried beneath false projections. He had been driving this company into the ground. And they had let him. I tapped the stack of papers in front of me. This company has been bleeding money for years. I locked eyes with one of the older board members. A man who had never spoken directly to me until today. And you all let Julian sell you the fantasy that everything was fine. A few of them stiffened. Others had the decency to look away. But I'm not Julian, I continued, my voice unwavering. I don't build on lies. I rebuild on truth. Then I dropped the bombshell. A multi-billion-dollar acquisition deal, one that I had personally negotiated behind closed doors. A deal that Julian had failed to secure for 2 years. The room went dead silent. The same men who had whispered behind my back now stared at me with something new in their eyes. Fear, respect, realization. I leaned back, folding my hands together. This is the future. If you want to stay in the past, let me know, I'll have security escort you out. And just like that, I wasn't just the new boss. I was the storm they never saw coming. The moment I had been waiting for had finally arrived. Julian Harrington, the man who had once promised me forever while stealing my future, now sat across from me, stripped of his arrogance, his security, and most importantly, his power. I had arranged the meeting myself. In the very office he used to call his empire. It was poetic, really. He had once sat in this chair, believing himself untouchable. Now, I was the one behind the desk. And he was nothing more than a desperate man clutching at the remnants of his downfall. His jaw tightened as he scanned the documents in front of him. The legal papers that outlined, in brutal detail, exactly what he had lost. The company, the assets, the credibility, everything he had tried to steal from me had now been taken from him. This is ridiculous, he muttered, his voice laced with the same arrogance that had once charmed me. You can't do this. I tilted my head, studying him. Oh, Julian, I said, my tone smooth, almost amused. I already did. He clenched his fists. You set me up. I laughed softly. You set yourself up. I just watched you dig your own grave and made sure you fell in. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. There was nothing left to say. Really, the evidence of his embezzlement was airtight. The board had already voted him out unanimously. His family had disowned him to save face. And his reputation? It was in shambles, thanks to the media firestorm I had personally orchestrated. You never belonged here, he finally said, his voice hoarse. This was supposed to be mine. I leaned forward, smiling. And yet, here we are. The silence stretched between us, thick with his realization. He had spent years underestimating me, manipulating me, believing I would always play the supporting role. But now, he was the one standing in the ruins. And I was the one who had built something greater from the ashes. As security arrived to escort him out, I spoke one last time. Goodbye, Julian, I said, watching the satisfaction flicker in his eyes before it was swallowed by defeat. Enjoy the view from the bottom. I had spent years believing that Julian's deception was the greatest betrayal I would ever endure. That was before I discovered the deeper truth, the one that turned my world upside down all over again. I sat in my office, my fingers lightly tracing the edges of the folder in front of me. The one Cameron, my trusted ally, had just delivered with a grim expression. I thought you might want to see this before it goes public. He had said before leaving me alone with the weight of the truth. I opened it. Inside was a web of secrets more twisted than I had ever imagined. Julian's betrayal was just the tip of the iceberg. It wasn't just about him stealing my future. It was about everyone who had conspired with him. His family, his inner circle, and worst of all, my own father. My breath caught as I read the documents. Bank transfers, business deals, hidden partnerships. My father, the man who had always told me I had to work twice as hard to earn my place in this world, had been working with Julian behind my back. Funding him, protecting him, helping him steal from me. I felt the familiar burn of betrayal. But this time, it didn't break me. This time, it fueled me. I picked up my phone. My fingers steady as I dialed the number I never thought I would call again. Almira, my father's voice answered, thick with forced warmth, like he hadn't just been exposed as my enemy. I know everything, I said, my voice even, deadly calm. Silence, then a measured exhale. I assume you're calling to negotiate. I let out a soft laugh, sharp, humorless. No, father, I'm calling to let you know that when I take Julian down completely, you're coming with him. The silence that followed was delicious. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one begging for scraps of love or validation. No, this time, I was the one holding all the cards. And I was about to burn their empire to the ground. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for permission. I wasn't seeking approval. I wasn't playing by their rules. I was done being the pawn in their game. I walked through the towering glass doors of Monroe Holdings, my heels clicking against the marble floor. Just months ago, I had been an outsider, an afterthought, in my own family's legacy. My father had ensured I was nothing more than a figurehead, a placeholder, while Julian had tried to strip me of my worth entirely. They had underestimated me. Never again. Miss Monroe, my assistant, Elise, called as she hurried to keep up. The board is expecting you in. I know, I said, adjusting the cuff of my blazer. Let them wait. I stepped into the boardroom, eyes scanning the very people who had once doubted me, the same executives who had whispered behind my back, siding with Julian and my father, believing I was nothing more than a symbolic heir, someone they could ignore. That ended today. I placed my folder on the table and leaned forward, meeting each of their gazes head-on. Let's cut to the chase, I said smoothly. I've secured full control of Monroe Holdings. Effective immediately. Julian is out. My father is out, and any of you who had a hand in their deceit should consider resigning before I personally remove you. A few men shifted uncomfortably. Others stiffened in their seats. But none dared speak. I continued, my voice unwavering. For years, this company has been run like an old boys club. That changes now. We're restructuring, we're modernizing, and we're thriving, with or without you. Silence. Then, one by one, hands tapped the table, a slow ripple of acceptance, of respect. Even those who had doubted me saw the truth now. I wasn't just a Monroe by name. I was the force that would lead them into the future. As the meeting adjourned, Elise approached, grinning. That was incredible. I smirked. That was just the beginning. Because for the first time, I wasn't fighting to belong. I already did. And no one, no man, no family name, no betrayal, would ever take that away from me again. Power had shifted. I wasn't just stepping into my rightful place, I was rewriting the rules. But unfinished business had a way of clawing its way back. It started with a single call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to pick up. A ragged breath, then a voice I never expected to hear again. Almira, we need to talk. Julian. I should have hung up. I should have let him drown in the mess he created. But curiosity held me still. He sounded different, desperate. What could we possibly have to talk about? I said, my tone sharper than steel. They're coming for me, he muttered, voice tight with panic. And when they realize I have nothing left, they'll come for you. I nearly laughed. He thought I was afraid? You have nothing left because I took everything. I reminded him. You deserve whatever's coming. Julian had always been a vulture, feeding off of what he didn't earn, thriving on power he didn't deserve. But he had also been reckless, arrogant enough to cross people even more ruthless than himself. I made mistakes, Almira, he admitted, but you don't understand, there are things happening behind the scenes. Things you don't know about. I leaned back in my chair, watching the city skyline, feeling completely untouchable. I know everything. Julian, I said smoothly, including how you embezzled millions, how you betrayed your own allies, and how you thought you could use me as a pawn. A sharp inhale, then silence. You think you're safe? He whispered. You think winning the company makes you untouchable? I smirked. No, Julian, I know it does. He was scrambling now, and I wasn't about to save him. Good luck, I said before hanging up. I had fought for this moment, bled for it, and now? Now I watched as the man who tried to destroy me finally fell. There was a particular kind of satisfaction in watching someone walk straight into the trap they set for you. Julian had underestimated me, they all had. They thought I'd collapse under the weight of betrayal, that I'd drown in the wreckage they left behind. But I didn't break, I rebuilt, and now, it was time for them to pay the price for their greed. The gala was perfect, a grand affair dripping in wealth and power. Filled with people who thrived on influence. It was the kind of night Julian once ruled over. Now, he was about to become its spectacle. He arrived late, cocky despite his downfall, his suit still tailored, though desperation clung to him like cheap cologne. He had no idea this would be his last moment of control. I let him bask in his delusions a little longer before I stepped forward. The room quieting as I lifted my glass. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice silk and steel. Tonight, we celebrate new beginnings. Julian lifted his own glass, smirking like he thought I'd welcome him back into my world. But then the doors swung open. Lawyers, federal agents, journalists. Every camera turned to him. Every truth I had unearthed was about to be broadcast to the world. The fraud, the stolen funds, the deception. Julian's smirk vanished. Panic flashed across his face. A mirror image of the fear he once tried to instill in me. You think you can do this to me? He hissed under his breath. I smiled, sipping my champagne. I already did. The agents stepped forward. The room held its breath. Julian tried to run. Security blocked the exits. A lifetime of deceit and arrogance crumbling in mere seconds. As they dragged him away, he turned back one last time, his eyes pleading. I raised my glass, watching him disappear. Enjoy the downfall, Julian, you built it yourself. The morning after Julian's downfall, the world felt different, lighter, quieter, more mine than it had ever been before. I stood at my office window. The city sprawling beneath me like a kingdom finally reclaimed. Headlines flooded every news outlet. Julian Harrington exposed. Fraud. Lies. And corporate collapse. Scandal at Harrington Enterprises. Betrayal at the highest level. And my personal favorite, how Almira Monroe took down a titan. I took a slow sip of my coffee. The bitterness grounding me. I had spent years playing it safe. Moving cautiously. Making myself smaller to fit into the spaces others allowed me. But today, I filled the entire damn room. The intercom buzzed. Miss Monroe, the board is waiting. The board, mine now, a table of men who once dismissed me as an accessory to Julian's success. Now forced to acknowledge the truth, I wasn't his shadow. I was the storm that swept him away. I entered the conference room. And the conversations died instantly. Eyes flickered with a mix of curiosity, wariness, and, most importantly, respect. Julian had spent years bending these people to his will. But I had done something better. I had shown them the truth. And now, they were ready to follow me. I took my seat at the head of the table, the seat Julian used to occupy, and let the silence stretch. Let the weight of the moment settle. Then I leaned forward, my voice calm, steady. Let's get started. This wasn't just about winning. This was about ruling. For the first time in my life, I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. I was the sun. I walked through the halls of Monroe Global, the company that once bore Julian's name but was now reborn under mine. It still amazed me how quickly things had changed, how a woman they once dismissed as a mere +1 had become the force behind an empire. The whispers in the corridors were no longer condescending, they were reverent. People didn't just see me now, they followed me. Today was different, bigger. The press had gathered in the grand atrium, their cameras flashing as I stepped onto the stage. The crowd, investors, employees, industry giants, fell silent as I took the mic. A year ago, they called me a background character. My voice was calm, steady, a woman standing next to a powerful man. They never thought I'd be the one writing the final chapter. A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. I let them sit with the weight of it before I continued. Julian Harrington stole, deceived, and manipulated to build his kingdom. But the truth is, his empire was never his. It thrived because of people like you. And today, that empire is ours. Applause erupted. I smiled, feeling every ounce of the power that now belonged to me. But we're not here to celebrate the fall of one man, I said, letting my voice rise. We're here to celebrate the future. A future where talent wins over nepotism. Where integrity holds more weight than last names. Where people who are overlooked become the ones leading the charge. Christine and Bruno stood at the side, nodding, their pride evident. Even Amelia, who had fought so hard for redemption, was here, standing among the employees. No longer a traitor, but a woman trying to reclaim her own story. I exhaled. I had spent years waiting for permission to exist fully. No more. So, I said, stepping back from the mic, my smile unwavering, let's build something legendary. The standing ovation that followed was more than just applause. It was a coronation.